The head dreams rules and protocols to consciously regulate its body. The hand makes finances visible. Bones hold the body's parts in a set of skeletal relations. The heart beats a rhythm of rituals and practices, circulating implicit vibes and affects. The melon sends vibrations, like this message, far beyond the body's sensory limits. And tunneling into the depths of our world, roots build networks of memory and lore, delivering nutrients to its body. Hello, world. We're going to start by introducing ourselves. Lina?
And maybe just for everyone tuning in live, we are in real time streaming while we give a talk, so I'm going to ask Lina to maybe move in a little bit closer to me.
Bear with us. I'm Lina. I'm a maintainer at Trust.
I'm Calum, also a maintainer at Trust.
I'm Jovana. I'm also a maintainer at Trust.
So, welcome to Arc 2. An arc is made up of events and moves us through peaks and plateaus, allowing us to renew and transform. Trust's Arc 2 is an errand into the collective body, focusing on sustainable infrastructure and imaginative metaphors. What the ploof is the collective body? So I'm going to give a little introduction to Arc 2, and then Calum is going to go into more detail about Trust's collective body, and then we're going to move forward into this upcoming year of programming. Just to start, I know we already introduced ourselves, but wanted to also shout out Fluff Lord, who contributed these gorgeous visuals. What the ploof is a collective body. A collective body is a sack, a bag. It holds people and things and meanings, roots and vessels, infrastructures, circulate life, blood through the organs. A collective body holds things in particular powerful relation to one another and to us. So we wanted to start with this text by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson called Metaphors We Live By, and Calum has made this amendment to the title to be Metaphors We Organize With. So we're thinking about metaphors and imagery to give form to something as abstract or metaphysical as a collective body, and maybe considering what kinds of different metaphors can open up new possibilities for ways that we can be incongruous. This is from the text. I'm not going to read the quote. But we're looking to alternative bodies to think about how coordination and collaboration, sociality, porousness, mutability happens, and to think about how we can better organize. In the past, we've found that legal and technical approaches to organizing have felt limiting in their capacity to build worlds. So we're really embarking on this quest to anatomize, examine, dissect, and assemble collective bodies. To recount this monstrous epoch, we need monstrous stories. And I've been noticing this instinct of turning away from the world or from each other, turning inwards. And the fundamental orientation of Trust has always been towards the external and towards others. You know, obviously being in this space together, hosting our Discord, but also this emphasis on world building and world building in this very material as well as emotional sense. So we're thinking about the collective body, which is an exercise also in self-reflection, thinking about what it means to be a collective body. What does it require to sustain and maintain it? How do we coordinate and act in concert? And today we'll be laying out the trust body as a starting point for thinking more generally about the possibilities for organization and collectivity.
So, kind of echoing what Lina was saying, we're going to start by doing a collective body scan of trust. So exemplifying this methodological approach through trust itself. Then we'll kind of give some glimpses of metaphorical beginnings that we're thinking about for providing guidelines for this program, and then we will shed some light on what to expect with ARC 2. So we'll unpack trust as a collective body, but first, because as many new members to trust have let us know, it's very hard to understand what trust is and to find material that gives insight into what we've done. And so we wanted to start with a bit of context and to shed some light on trust as a project and trust as a milieu. So trust is maintained by the three of us sitting here with the Grillmeister and ever central Arthur Rowing Bear, and Bunkerhead's 1998, who has played, especially in this project, an instrumental role in finding generative ways, like literally generative, of producing all of the visuals, and is tirelessly at work building our website currently. Trust is a network of utopian conspirators. It's a project about creating a context where practitioners are able to experiment and prototype their projects and to kind of have new ideas and initiate conversations with the aim of kind of experimenting on new ways of learning together and building infrastructures together. And at the core of the project is this central tension between worlding and infrastructure. And Trust has, for the past 6 years now, really aimed to tie these two processes together. I am seeing from the live stream that I am way too loud. So what we mean by worlding is that it's a way of constructing alternative places and relations and societies for us to inhabit. And the idea is to try and move beyond this feeling of being stuck or this feeling of the end of history to, in the present, try and ignite alternatives and try and actively have agency to think about worlds we might choose to live in and create. And this is kind of really nicely echoed by this quote from Ian Chang. Similarly, we see worlding somewhat as offering possibilities that speculation doesn't, in that it is very much tied to the material. It's very much tied to the here and now. It's not about the future. It's not about something that doesn't yet exist, but it's kind of rather about how we can organize in the present to think differently about the world that we live in. And so we want to, at Trust, tie this imaginative process and this materially engaged process to actual material and to building worlds through infrastructural development and focusing on the material conditions and thinking about the things that act as substrates for the Trust network and members to have meaningful, playful, productive, stimulating encounters with each other. And from the beginning, trust was kind of grounded in these 4 different pillars. So at the very beginning, we talked about wanting to, in some way, respond to the systemic challenges of growing wealth inequality, climate catastrophe, and the automation of labor, and wanting to very much in our own context and in the kind of in proximate horizons begin trying to prototype responses to these challenges. This is similarly about moving beyond critique and kind of understanding the importance of a critical position towards hegemonic power structures, but realizing that that isn't enough, and realizing that we want to also kind of begin prototyping alternatives. Trust is a physical space that we're all in now in Berlin, and this situatedness is really important to the project, and it's not trying to create universal frameworks that apply to everybody, but rather thinking about what is our context, what is our milieu, and what is our situated place. And then we've also kind of always, as we're doing now, I guess, live streaming online, wanted to find interactive and participatory ways of bringing the discussions beyond the limits of our physical space. And so for people who are joining us online, Trust is a physical location in Berlin. What I like about this talk is I've done it not at Trust before, and now it's very meta because we are also here. Trust has an online community on Discord. We facilitate events like reading groups and show and tell formats for around 400 members at the moment. From the beginning, we experimented with ways of bringing the conversations online and thinking about playful and exciting visual formats that would, as we kind of talked about at the beginning, not follow this very boring camera in the corner of a white cube approach to documentation, and thinking about the mediation of the collective body is as important as the collective body itself. We turn our space in Berlin into a live streaming studio, as many of you can see right now. And the space is funded by renting out desk space. So it's not the most secure business model. The online membership functions nicely in addition to it. But we average out by covering the costs of having this physical space, which is very much like the heart of the community. This is a recording from I think our kind of initial live stream game experiment called Plotting in 2020. That was with Joanna Pope and Steph Hall-Trieu. And this was our kind of initial experiment at finding playful ways of exploring fields of knowledge together. And in plotting, players bring different concepts to then chart according to a 2x2 grid. This clip is from Arc 1, which was in collaboration with Moving Castles and explored mechanisms for collective world building. And here you can see a Twitch live stream controlling a single 3D environment. So kind of trying to explore these swarm control and collective control methods. Trust also has, as I was mentioning, these regular event formats, sandbox and reading group in Discord. We also have a library here in Berlin and online catalog. It's a Berlin chapter of the Cybernetics Library, which means that it's organized according to cybernetic methods, and it's kind of the inverse of your typical library where members check books in. So it becomes this nice assemblage, perhaps collective body reflecting the community's research interests. And this is another example from ARB's mascot experiments, which was trying to think about ways that mascots might reflect collectives and how we could have collective representations that somehow could function or be controlled by a multiplicity. And the mascot was kind of symbolically referencing a glimpse of the Hydra, this idea of the post-capitalist Hydra, which we kind of started Trust Out in 2018 describing. We also have done experiments in community decision-making and wanting to always prototype and lead with hypotheses that we can gain insights into and think about how can we gain real-time feedback from community members and think about what works and what doesn't work and how can we react to that given our scale and intimate setup. So with this kind of general background, I'm going to now illustrate trust as a collective body and do a collective body scan. And this is kind of a moment for us to self-reflect and think about trust as an organization. How can we reinforce the existing infrastructures, make them explicit, build out capacity, and think about how trust can be a more sustainable collective body. And it's also further kind of catalyzed by some of our existing research around collective voice and thinking about, and this is also reflected by the cybernetics library and how in many ways the type of collectivity that trust is interested in is one that amplifies or even foregrounds the differences between the members, or kind of somehow allows for a multiplicity or cacophony of voices to emerge rather than blending everything into the same. And our focus on collective bodies is very much inspired by cybernetics, and this quote is from the cybernetician Stafford Beer, which kind of is a really simple, nice thing to always remember when especially looking at marketing material from tech companies. The purpose of a system is what it does. So like, how can we actually glimpse or understand what a system is doing and what are the material affordances of something? And so by focusing on collective bodies, we're hoping to kind of follow in the cybernetic spirit and link the biological, the social, the technological, and the material, and think about how these things are programmed and reprogrammable. And this is a kind of overview of the starting body, but over the year we're hoping to kind of find new body parts that we've missed, or evolve some of the body parts, or think about what are skill trees that these body parts might go through. So the head is about decision-making rules and protocols, and it's supposed to be this very conscious, articulated phenomena. Like the head is really wanting to set these rules. And so with trust, we're thinking about, in general, just these aims of covering the operational costs of the space. We're thinking about infrastructural maintenance. We want to be able to remunerate people for all the work that they do. We want to create additional opportunities for people to discuss ideas in progress, provide grants for experiments and prototypes, and to elegantly archive and make this research somehow accessible to an outside world. Also, as part of governance and through ARC 2, we'll be introducing something called bubble voting, which is following on from BubbleBot, which I'll discuss later. But the idea is it's about finding a mechanism that allows ideas that deserve to be kind of worked on a little bit more and maybe need some funding to do that, to bubble up to the surface to then receive some small grants. And so with bubble voting, members will nominate posts for funding by upvoting with an emoji in Discord. A bot will then copy these upvoted posts that meet a certain threshold to a special channel. And we'll be electing a council who will vote continuously on these proposals with a specific budget of votes each month. And then once a quorum is met, or once a certain number of votes has been awarded to a proposal, then a grant will be awarded. And the idea is that this can be a very dialogical, continuous, and ongoing way of helping things in the community that could benefit from some additional time and space to think or to write or to document, the opportunity to do that. Hands are representing finances and financial transparency, and this is an overarching aim of ARC 2, and we'll be introducing into our website a kind of transparent reflection of our budget and how member contributions are going towards our different activities. We've currently set up an open collective called Trust Fund. This is made possible by a very generous, wonderful grant from Maria Paula Fernandez that is enabling us to start offering grants for members. And Open Collective in general is a nice platform because all of the funding that goes in and all of the expenses are transparently tracked, so anyone can see that and keep track of that. The ear represents tenets, which are principles or beliefs. And guiding ARC 2, we have this overarching tenet of financial sustainability. We will launch a knowledge base, collective governance, research and development, communal activities, and common ground. So kind of thinking about ways that we can increase dialogue and increase the opportunity that members have to discuss their own tenets with each other. For mouth, we're thinking about voice, language, generational meaning making. And within trust, we have Bubblebot. Bubblebot works to allow members to decide which posts get reposted on our Twitter account. And if you look at our Twitter account now, it's really this kind of assemblage of a lot of different pieces of information taken from our Discord. And what we like about this is it's, again, kind of showing the diversity of interests and voices that exist within Trust, instead of somehow like providing a takeover opportunity or something like that. It's really this assemblage or cacophony of voices. The skeleton is reflective of structure and system design. And with Trust, we think about it as a platform for collective research and development, media archiving and ownership. And so we have Discord as this event-based chat. We do live streams like this one here. We do experiments with bots and games and play games together. And there's also these operational things like accounting or our website, and thinking about how going forward that can be owned by members and how we can think about progressive decentralization. The heart is the rituals, it's the rhythm, it's vibe sensing. And I think the space we're in now is one of the kind of elements of Trust's heart. It's also the kind of beat, which is the rhythm of the events that we do. So we have a reading group that happens every month, and we have a live event here that happens every month. The melon, which is a extrasensory organ within marine mammals, is reflective of long-distance communication and broadcasting. And this is kind of what we're in right now, a live stream and our video archive. And finally, roots are the lore, the history, the context, and the nutrient delivery system. And kind of as a starting point for thinking about Trust lore, we return to A Glimpse of the Hydra, which is this original text that Trust wrote in 2018 that imagines the post-capitalist Hydra as a huge body with 9 heads, all immortal. As fast as one head is smashed, there grows up 2. To distribute power in more equitable ways, it's going to have to start with the head. And so I think in many ways we're still trying to think about what guillotines for organizations and org charts with more heads than a Hydra look like.
Great. So now we kind of move to the present and also the future. And in this section of metaphorical openings, we start by pondering and imagining what kind of metaphors, frameworks, and toolkits can help us navigate this exploratory landscape of Arc 2. So, in one sense, we want to explore trust as a collective body, but in a broader sense, in the coming Arc 2 programming and thematics, we actually want to study collectivity in general, as well as like intelligence in general. So what does it mean to act, live, move, and think collectively? At the core of each metaphorical interface, so to say, is of course the collective body. So in this sense, we would like to envision this entity through an interplay of biological, social, and any kind of systems perspectives. So here you may think about herds, swarms, families, organizations. These are all examples of collective bodies. But then if you look at the field of embodied cognition, here there's a really interesting emphasis on the active role of the body in shaping its own cognition. And from this perspective, which is also kind of reminiscent of the Stafford Beer cybernetics perspective, an agent's or an entity's cognition and actions are shaped and determined by its body and how its body interacts with the environment. So in a sense, in order to understand what an entity does, we need to understand the physicality of its body. But a body is not just a constellation of organs, because it's also how these organs connect to each other. So we can think about this in terms of tissue, for example. If we imagine a chimerical body, like a body with many different kinds of organs, this opens up the question of how can different organs or different components of a body find common ground? Because in order to have a functioning body, you need to create some kind of commonalities of collaboration and communication. So here we thought about a really interesting framework that we kind of delved into in some of the reading groups, which is called collaborative cybernetics. And the idea of collaborative cybernetics is that we want to dissect what collaboration truly is. How do, for example, humans collaborate with each other, but then also how do humans collaborate with machines, AI, networks, animals, microbes, or even ecosystems to form a coherent body. So these frameworks and questions are going to be explored in the coming programming next to the very kind of physical questions. So having this in mind, we thought about some more concrete examples of metaphors that help us think about collective bodies. One of them is Stigmergy, which has been a very common and important metaphor, not just in the research of multiple trust members, but also because of its resemblance to self-organizing processes. So what do I really mean with Stigmergy? Well, Stigmergy is a process where agents or entities or people can indirectly collaborate or coordinate with each other by changing their environment or leaving sort of mini traces in the environment. So in a sense, we leave these traces and enable new or incoming members or people or entities to come and to continue this behavior indirectly, but also collaboratively. So in a sense, if we think about trust, very often we kind of see these self-organizing, spontaneous processes where somebody pitches a project or a working group, and then it just kind of takes on its own life with leaving traces in the environment. The next metaphor is actually inspired by the book that was written by Jenna Sutella, which is called Orgs, From Slime Mold to Silicon Valley and Beyond. And here we don't identify a single metaphor, but rather a way of thinking about collective bodies that we thought was very interesting. So this book is sort of like a experimental survey looking at decentralized organisms and also organizations. And here Jenna Sutella invited multiple authors to think about how do we create organizational spiritual charts or sort of mazes in different ways, so biologically, socially, and just broadly in terms of systems. So one interesting example here is the many-headed slime mold organism, which Jana Sutela worked with very often. Then we have another really fun metaphor, but we encountered this creature called Hattifatteners. I'm probably butchering the word, but it's from the Finnish cartoon Moomin. And this mysterious creature, or creatures, we're not really sure, because they're a collective body themselves, they seem to have only one motivation in life, which is to keep moving towards the horizon. They're kind of these pale, gray, white color-looking creatures, resembling something of like a mushroom stalk with paws that move around together. So it's just interesting that we don't really know the motivations of this creature other than it just moves and acts together. And now we move into mythological metaphors.
Yeah. So we've also been looking to mythology and folk traditions for metaphors, especially on recombinant beings. So obviously we've already touched on the Hydra with its multiple heads, which has been an important image for trust and thinking about decision making. In our skeleton that we've walked through, we're also attempting to move away from the human body and thinking about hybridity by troubling the sanctity or the unity of the body and its boundaries, whether that be breaking down the boundaries between the living and the dead, or the human and the animal, the self and the other. This is a fable by Aesop about the belly and the members, which tells the tale of a conflict between the belly and the feet. And the rest of the body, and the stomach is revolting against the rest of the body, and to the point where the body becomes enfeebled and wasted away. And we've also been thinking about this mythical creature in ancient Chinese and Japanese tradition called Bai Ze, which has the body of either a cow or a cat-like creature, depending on the telling, that also has 9 eyes and 6 horns. And the story is that the creature creeps through the villages and eats our bad dreams and evil experiences. We've also been drawing on decolonial theory to think about fluidity and modularity. So pushing against systems of classification and their ordering impulse, and how that relates to thinking about ownership and extraction. Rather thinking about, how can we think about the illegible, what's uninscribed, maybe politically autonomous zones of being and doing and solidarity. So disavowing this colonial civilizing impulse that creates systems to designate the outside and the inside, what is civilized versus savage, and to think about also the body's relationship with its habitat, its surroundings, what is external, and the porousness.
Okay, now we come to our final section, which is back to the real world. What can we expect from ARC 2? So ARC 2 programming season will focus on the trust collective body, as we already mentioned, both with a theoretical but also with a practical endeavor. These include financial sustainability, knowledge-based expansion, collective governance, research and development. So we plan to have each month of the programming dedicated for a specific organ of the trust body that Calum listed previously, and also to explore the modalities that each organ represents. The aim is to invite speakers who are going to come from very different disciplines and hopefully kind of bring all of these diverse perspectives to tackle one organ and its functioning. And also the point will be to explore metaphors of collectivity and what it really means to act and think as a collective body.
And kind of echoing Jovana, also kind of foregrounding trust's financial sustainability and transparency, and thinking about, I mean, we will be launching a new website very soon, which will have a more like streamlined and articulated way of breaking down the research that people have been doing and thinking about what are the artifacts connected to different events and to research projects. And Arc 2 is also about finally kind of providing the extended trust community with opportunities to prototype their own collective bodies or grow their own organs, evolve their organs. And so we will be in September starting trust fund and member grants, and we'll be holding elections for a curatorial council towards the end of August, but we'll announce all of that soon. And just to reiterate that this is all made possible by Maria Paula Fernandez and the Gorley testnet. So that is all from us. Thank you, everyone.